I am very pleased to introduce Derek Brinkley. Derek is the Assistant Vice President of Undergraduate Admissions at Columbia College, and he helped launch this amazing 2-year program designed for low-income first-generation college students at Loyola University in Chicago. And in terms of what Derek enjoys doing outside of his work, he likes spending time with friends, scuba diving, and doing CrossFit. I'm also very, very pleased to introduce Mariela Regalado. And Mariela is a college access consultant and received the Daily News Hometown Hero in Education Award for the work she has accomplished in college access. And in terms of free time, Mariela enjoys writing about her multidimensional experience through poetry and prose, traveling abroad, and spending time with her Yorkie, Lola. Another fun fact about Mariela is that she's actually 38 weeks pregnant. So thank you, Mariela, so much for doing this with us, and certainly send up a flare if you have to excuse yourself during this time. And another fun fact about our panelists, they are both first-generation college graduates who elected to go into academia to make the college transition and experience smoother for future students. So we're really, really grateful to have their perspectives. But before we jump in, I want to be sure to manage expectations. We know that you all have urgent, personal, specific questions about your situations heading into college, internships, or the job market. We cannot answer each of your individual questions tonight, and we wouldn't presume to know what's best for you or your family, but we do hope to give you some perspectives from experts, some questions to think about, and a reminder that you are not alone in making these decisions. There are hundreds of other young women like you on this call. And so with that, we're going to start the evening off with an icebreaker that will require you to reminisce on the best days of your undergraduate career. So our question is, what made your college experience worthwhile? For those of you who are logged on, we will be asking you to participate in polls throughout this webinar. So for now, join us and share your answer to the icebreaker. If you're currently in college, what is making your experience worthwhile? Okay, Mariela, we're actually going to start with you. What made your college experience worthwhile?
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the introduction and the fun facts. So I wrote down community when you mentioned the icebreaker, because I think everyone puts like such a huge emphasis on like what your dreams are going to be when you go to college. But I think what made it worthwhile for me were all the different communities that I was able to be a part of, right? And it wasn't just like, okay, I love, creating TV episodes, so I'm going to stick with the TV club. It was also like, no, I'm going to study abroad. I'm going to join this club. I'm going to join a sorority. I'm going to try this and different things. So I think what made it worthwhile was being able to broaden kind of this social interaction and allow myself the opportunity to interact with different communities that I wouldn't have thought of in high school, but college gave me the opportunity to branch out.
Thank you so much, Mariela. That definitely resonates for me. Derek, when you think back and reminisce, what comes to mind?
Oh, goodness, what comes to mind? First off, thank you all for having me today. I'm very excited to be here. What comes to mind about my college experience, I guess, really kind of stems from really the experience as a whole, right? I think that there's so much learning that happens inside of the classroom, which is awesome. But there's also so much learning that occurs outside of the classroom. And it's really, I think, kind of the combination of those two things that really made my college experience amazing. I learned, just as much outside of the classroom, and in some cases even more about life, about how to go along with people, about how to really be kind of a person for others during my college experience. And so I look back very fondly on my college days. And partially that's why I still work at a college. It's because I like, being around students as they kind of go through kind of that growth and development process.
I love that. Thank you so much. And for sure, I can say that what I learned outside of classes was probably even more valuable than what I learned in classes. And you're not supposed to say that, but in fact, you learn how to actually interact with people. and frankly, people from different cultures and, just so much. I think that, I was a poli-sci major, and actually running for student government, I learned more about political science than I did in class. So that totally resonates. All right, with that, I think I want to take a peek at our poll and see what folks said. So most viewers selected personal development as their main answer, followed by social gathering, and then coursework and subject matter. That's what's up. You pretty much agreed with us in terms of what you thought was really valuable about the undergraduate experience. Okay, thank you so much, viewers, for participating in the poll. So now that we've broken the ice and are a little bit more acquainted, we're going to jump right into tonight's panel discussion. So the questions that we're going to ask are going to address the concerns of girls who code college-aged alumni and students across the country who are either beginning, matriculating, or ending their college experience. Let's start with the college admissions process. So students entering into the collegiate space in the next 2 years or so will be venturing into the unknown. A lot is going to change about the college application process, making it very different from what students have actually prepared years for. With schools converting to pass or fail grading systems and suspending standardized test requirements for incoming students, what other selection criteria and data points do you think are important for students to share? Derek, this is like right in your wheelhouse. I'd love to start with you. Can you tell us what you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for me, I think it's so important for folks to understand and recognize that the college admissions process really is a process, right? There is not a right or a wrong way really to go through the college admissions process. And I think so many folks get so kind of just caught up in the excitement of it, which is exciting, obviously. They get caught up in the fear of the unknown. They don't know, that there are real people on the other side of the desk that are actually reading those applications and really getting to know you as an individual and as a student. And so I think the biggest thing that I can really give advice in terms of the college admissions process is to, first off, stay true to yourself. Make sure that you are really presenting yourself in such a way where the college can really get to know you as an individual outside of what's actually going to be listed on the transcript, your high school transcript, outside of any test scores that you might have. Really make sure that you are providing a great writing sample. You are allowing us as admissions professionals to really get to know you and what it is that you are looking for and what you would actually bring to our college campus. When you really think about kind of the pass-fail situation and you think about standardized test scores, knowing kind of the environment in which that we are in right now due to the coronavirus, I think that it's important to know that all of us, even us on the college side, are also in the same boat as you are as well. And so, I think there's really going to be a lot of grace from a lot of colleges in terms of kind of the pass-fail situation and, what your grades might look like during certain times of your transcript, just because of the nature of where we are, at this very moment in time. I think the other thing to kind of keep in mind, especially when it comes to test scores, is that there really is a growing movement across the country for different colleges and universities to go test optional. I work at Columbia College Chicago. We're an arts and media focused institution in Chicago, and we've been test optional for as long as I can remember. And there are now over 1,000 colleges and universities in the country that are test optional as well. There's a really great website that I usually encourage students to look at, and it's fairtest.org. And fairtest.org, you can actually see a list of different test optional colleges and really learn a little bit more about the test optional movement. I think it's just so important to know that when it comes to testing, obviously, it's something that you should do. You should make sure that you're taking your ACT and your SAT if you can. But know that I think many colleges out there are really starting to understand that, 3 hours of testing that you're doing on a Saturday does not negate 4 years of preparation and hard work that you've really put into your high school career, right? And so it's just really important to know that testing is not the end all and be all. I have a lot of challenges with testing in my own way in terms of biases that are kind of located within testing and whatnot. And so I think it's just really important to know that anything else that you can provide with your personal statement, with a portfolio, with whatever that might be, can really be helpful in the college admissions process.
Derek, thank you so much. That answer I know is probably causing a lot of our viewers right now to breathe a sigh of relief. In that there is a movement where it's a much bigger picture than just a test score. Also, what really resonated for me is what you said about grace, the fact that we're all in this together right now and that everything looks really different. And so this seems like the right time for a student also to, as you said, to tell their story and their particular predicament, and also what kind of defines them as they're trying to think about that opportunity. So that is really helpful. Mariela, I would love to hear from you and just get your thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, I was nodding throughout Derek's entire answer because it's so true. And I love how he picked grace as the word to describe it, because I think that we keep talking about like, when's everything going to go back to normal? You know, when's New York City off pause? When's such and such country like, you know, open again? And I think that there's this tremendous opportunity for us to think about what comes next for us, right? Because colleges right now are figuring out, okay, well, you know, before they would cap an online class at 40 students, but then now certain colleges had to create online classes for 4,000 students, right? So I think it's forcing all of us to figure out different ways to get the information and to get to our next step. So I think my biggest tip for college admissions right now, whether you're a high school, you know, freshman or a high school senior, or let's say you're at a community college right now and you were thinking of transferring, I think the best thing you can do right now is just research, right? So if you keep a college list, I love Google Docs and Google Sheets for this, because I would always ask my students to share it with me so we can kind of correspond that way. But keep a list. What are the schools that you were thinking of applying for? Monitor their deadlines. Are they waiving their fees? Do they have virtual, you know, like right now we're doing a great virtual exchange. Do they have one coming up? Join their mailing list, right? And make an account. There are so many different things that we can do right now virtually. And I think if we get organized and we research and we kind of, you know, pace ourselves through it, we have this tremendous opportunity to figure out, you know, what comes next, because the colleges are also figuring it out also, right? So I think I would definitely suggest to like all my high school students or even current college students that were thinking of transferring, do your research right now. You know, don't be afraid to call the college and see if maybe they have an admissions rep that's working from home who's going to be willing to answer your questions, right? And I think Derek mentioned it. He said real people. And I think that's one thing that the kids, I always say kids, that students always forget, is that there are real people reading your apps. And if you give yourself the opportunity now to figure out like what Columbia College expects from you, then we can plan that out. You know, you can have a conversation with a college counselor. You can have a conversation with somebody that you know that already went to college, and figure out what story can I add to my application, right? What doesn't my application say? Yes, I got all 70s my freshman year, but then during this pandemic, X, Y, and Z happened. And now like, this is my focus, right? So don't be afraid to tell your journey to colleges about what happened during this pandemic. So I think that's, I absolutely agree with Derek. And I think that would be the two things that I would add. Just research, absolutely. And pace yourself. But we have plenty of time to plan out what we're going to do. So I think that's what I would add.
Mariela, thank you so much. What I loved about your answer, so many things, but I loved it because it's about student agency and empowerment, and that there is a way for students, even in the midst of such a difficult time,
to advocate for themselves.
Exactly. That's what I really, really love about that answer. And I hope that the folks that are listening feel a sense of that, because it's very, very inspiring. So again, thank you both for sharing. Our next question speaks to matriculating students who are confused and looking to make educated decisions around moving forward with their college careers. So we did some digging and we found a survey by the EdTech company Circled In, where we saw about 70% of over 1,000 student respondents said COVID-19 will likely affect their financial situation, and more than 25% said it'll affect their ultimate college choice. Related, the Department of Education announced that DACA and international students would not be eligible for emergency aid from the CARES Act. So before we get more info from our panelists, viewers, we want to ask you, will you be completing your FAFSA form for the fall? We're gonna give you about 30 seconds to respond. While folks are kind of responding to that question, Mariela and Derek, the next question we have for you is, how will COVID affect financial aid packages, and should students still complete their FAFSA forms? As you're thinking through your answers, Mariela and Derek, I'll let you know how our viewers responded. Taking a quick look, based on the poll, 75% of viewers said yes, they would be completing their FAFSA forms, and 24% of them say no, they won't. So Mariela, I want to start with you, and viewers, of course, thank you so much for your candor. It's really helpful when you give us a sense of where you're at with your thinking. Mariela, give us your thoughts on this question.
Yeah, so this question makes like my brain explode, because financial aid is something that we've been trying to figure out from my students that are currently in college, figuring out like, okay, well, I'm no longer on campus. Does that mean I get, my room and board reimbursed because I'm not physically there, right? And we all know that online classes have a set price, and then room and board is a set price, right? And then for my high school seniors, figuring out, okay, well, my mom had X, Y, and Z job, and she was willing to give me X amount so I can go to school, but now we don't have that money anymore, right? Or I had a job throughout high school and I would pay for my own Metro card, so I was going to commute to school. So there are so many different factors. And then even with the FAFSA, one of the things that I've noticed is that financial aid is definitely going to be an even more extensive process, because specifically with FAFSA, it lets you use your parents' taxes or your guardian's taxes from the previous year, right? So FAFSA has what they call the prior rule. And so now I'm thinking about, okay, well, a lot of people, what are we up to now? 22 million people are currently unemployed. So it's one of those things where you're going to fill out your FAFSA with your parent or guardian's, taxes, but that income isn't reflective of what your current economic situation is. And so one of the things that my colleagues and I have been trying to do is figure out, well, what do students need to do now with their parents in order to demonstrate this change in income, right? Because for a lot of our students, your financial aid is directly tied to your expected family contribution, right? And again, a lot of these questions, we have no idea what the answer is, because FAFSA as an institution hasn't really said a lot about what's happening. And even with like the IRS, right, we're supposed to file taxes, and that got pushed back. So we're wondering, okay, well, does that mean that FAFSA will no longer open in October? Someone just asked, what happens if we have a sibling in college? So usually when you have a sibling in college, it's, I don't like saying easier, but it is more kind of streamlined to fill out your FAFSA, because you already have someone in college, so it usually mirrors that. But I think what it comes down to is we have to talk about money, right? And we have to ask questions. And we can't be shameful about what happened to our parents' employment, to our employment, or to our economic situation in general, because then we're not going to get anywhere. Like, we keep talking about advocacy. For financial aid, we need to advocate even more. And especially, I have to throw a plug in there. If you're 18 and up, please register to vote, because FAFSA is directly tied to our federal government. And so we literally have politicians that are people who make decisions for you. So please sign up, register to vote. But yes, definitely start off by having a conversation with your parents if you're in high school. And then if you're a college student right now, I would say reach out to your financial aid counselor at your campus and see what their guidelines are, because everything is rapidly changing right now. And I think that unfortunately, you might have to make a decision based on what's best for you and your family financially. Whereas before, we were probably going to go with what your dream school is, and we might have to pause or find like another route to get there in the future.
Mariela, thank you so much. There's so much that you had in your answer. And the thing that I think it really underscores too is that not only is it like changing on the financial aid front, but it could be that from the time you even apply to the when you know your family situation could radically change. And we've never seen the likes of this kind of uncertainty across so many people, that I think a lot of, you know, the women on this call are probably thinking to themselves, oh, wow, I need to connect with my counselor. I need to figure out what's going on. How do I tell my story? And Derek, I know you were literally about to climb into the screen because you're agreeing with everything Mariela said. Can you please add anything that you think Mariela didn't share, or echo some of what resonated for you?
Yeah, Mariela, first off, is spot on, right? I think one of the biggest things that resonated with me so much is to ask questions. One of the things, and I'm going to speak as a first-generation college student, I didn't know that I could go back to a college and see if I could get more money in order to help make college affordable. Right? The people that have money tend to be the ones to know that they can go back and ask for more money. Right? And so if you're a student who is a first generation college student, you haven't gone through the process before, make sure that you are asking your questions. And someone likes how I talk with my hands. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. So that's number one. I want to do, maybe if you don't mind, just a little bit of education about kind of the FAFSA. So just so everyone on the call knows, the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. It is a form that you fill out to the federal government, and the federal government comes up with what they call an EFC. It's your expected family contribution. And that is what the government says that your family should be able to contribute to your education as a student. And I always encourage every single student that I work with to file the FAFSA, file the FAFSA, file the FAFSA, file the FAFSA. Part of that is obviously there's federal aid and potentially some state aid that you might qualify for just by filing the FAFSA, right? Federal loans, as an example, is something that you can qualify for just by filing the FAFSA. The second thing that I want to say about that is that there are some colleges and universities out there that provide scholarships for you just by filing the FAFSA. And this is where I have to do my little plug about Columbia College Chicago, but we provide scholarships for students just by filing the FAFSA. It doesn't matter what your family's financial background, right? So make sure that you take the time to go through that process, because you never know if you're going to be missing out on free money or, again, federal loans if you don't file a FAFSA. So that's thing number one. Second thing I want to mention is make sure if you are currently enrolled in college that you are talking to the college or the university that you're currently enrolled at. Again, many colleges are giving out, again, refunds maybe for a room and board that was unused for the rest of the term. So you want to make sure that you're getting that information. You want to make sure that you are asking questions about the CARES Act. We mentioned that earlier. That's an act that Congress passed to provide colleges with funding to be able to give some of that funding back to students for all of the challenges that you've kind of been dealing with right now. So make sure that you are going through that process as well, and working with the colleges that you're going to. The third thing that I want to say is if you are a new student coming in, make sure that you are also working with the colleges that you are looking to enroll in for the fall. There are many colleges that have a reevaluation of financial aid process. So it kind of gets back to what Mariela was really saying about, you know, your taxes from 2 years ago. It's what's influencing your financial aid package today, which is kind of weird, but it's the situation that we're in. And so a lot of colleges have these reevaluation of financial aid award processes to allow you to say, you know what, my parent lost a job, or my guardian is really struggling right now. How can we really kind of make this work? And there typically, again, is some sort of process that you can go through in order to appeal for additional financial aid. So, you know, if you file the FAFSA, if you ask questions, if you talk to especially if you're coming into college, talk to your admissions representatives. We are here to really make sure that this process goes smoothly for you.
Derek, thank you so much. So much education there in terms of what you shared, and really, really valuable for the folks who are viewing right now. So, you know, I think our last question before we get into the Q&A section, we want to talk about what next steps could potentially look like for soon-to-be graduates. Some conversations with our alumni show that there's a heightened sense of anxiety for graduating college students. Students who were once looking to enter the workforce or move into postgraduate education opportunities are now thinking of taking a gap year. Using your experience as academic professionals, how would you advise students in this predicament to proceed? And Derek, we can have you start.
Well, excellent. That's a really, really, really great question. I can say that I relate in some ways to that. So I graduated from college in 2008, and if anyone knows anything of what happened in 2008, we had a big stock market crash, and it was hard. It was hard for folks who graduated in 2007, 2008, 2009 in order to find full-time employment and go through that process. And so, I think that one of the things that I encourage students to do is really to be open to any and all opportunities that might be available for you after you graduate from college, right? There are opportunities for internships. There should still be some job opportunities out there. I'm really interested, obviously how the tech industry kind of changes, knowing that we're relying a lot more on technology nowadays. And so there may be some really interesting, cool opportunities for many of you who are enrolled in a program that's more on the computer science side, or at Columbia College Chicago, we have a great game design program that's really tech heavy, or programming program that's really tech heavy. And so I think just keeping an open mind in terms of location, where is it that you might want to move once you graduate from college? Are there opportunities in some bigger tech hubs around the country that might be really great for you to kind of think about? How can you maybe take some time off and maybe travel a little bit? I think that, I believe that this time is really interesting because I think it's forcing us as not just as a country here. I know there's many viewers who are living in different parts of the world as well, but I think it's a really interesting time for us to kind of slow down a little bit and really kind of take some time to reflect on really how we want to build our lives as we move forward. And so, I think that, as best as you can stay focused on whatever that ultimate goal is for you. Again, whether that is entering the workforce, whether that is going to grad school once you graduate. A lot of colleges and universities are going to be looking, I think, for more students to enroll in grad school at this point in time. And so that could be an option for you to really think about. So, I think it's a perfect time just to kind of reflect and to really think about what's important for you as a human being in your life and how you really want to move forward kind of through this. And, for me, I was an education major in college. And so I ended up going into education once I graduated. I was a substitute teacher for a year after I graduated. And, it really allowed me to use the skill set that I learned in college, obviously from my education program, but I also went to a liberal arts college where they teach you critical thinking skills, communication skills, writing skills, those things that are so important for you, regardless of what industry it is that you go into after you graduate. And so, if you've got a really great, solid, well-rounded skill set, I think that you're going to be successful and you're going to find your way.
Derek, thank you so much. Mariela, I would love to get your take on that question for the soon-to-be graduates.
Okay, yeah, so what I wrote down on my notes as soon as you said that question was plan, right? I think that a gap year is an amazing opportunity if you planned it out, right? If you have the resources that you're going to need, if it's kind of this well thought out plan. And someone said, does a gap year make it easier or harder? And I want to mention that because you don't choose to go on a gap year because it's easier, right? If you're choosing to go on a gap year, it's because you've already thought of, okay, I'm going to try this to see if, I want to study international policy in school. So I'm going to go on this gap year so I can travel to another country and, use my skills, learn new ones, and see if this is something that I really want to do, right? Because then that gap year experience, I could bring it into now my grad school application, my college application, etc. So I don't want you to look at things as, okay, well, is it easier if I do it this way, or is it going to be harder? Don't make decisions like that. We have to make decisions that are going to align with what your goals are and like the person that you want to be once you're done with that. And I've taken advantage of those things. Like I didn't have this kind of 4-year college path. It actually took me 6 years to graduate from a bachelor's because I kept taking breaks in between, right? And mainly one of the reasons was because I was financially supporting my family, but the other reason was I got to travel with my school. So I've been to Australia, I've been to my native Dominican Republic. I've traveled all over the United States, literally doing education workshops and things like that. And all of that continuously led me towards a career in education, right? It wasn't kind of this easy way, but it taught me a lot about myself, and it aligned with what my future goals were going to be. So please don't make decisions based on if it's going to be easier, if it's going to be hard. I think you should plan it out and then base your decision on, is this plan going to work? Does this plan align with what I want for my future? And Derek mentioned the technology aspect. There are people working from home right now that a year ago would have never thought that they can be sitting in their living room still producing the same outcomes that they were having in the office, right? So when we talk about opportunity and advocacy, again, a remote internship, that's like unheard of. But companies and colleges made it happen because they needed to adapt to the times, right? And that's the same thing that you have to do, kind of adapt to it. But I think you also get to reinvent it and figure things out for yourself. And then the last thing I think is the mental health part. I saw this meme going around on Instagram that talked about, if you're not productive during this time, you lack discipline. And I'm like, okay, we're going to put a sticky note on that, because one, don't let anyone shame you if you're not being productive.
Preach.
And two, don't do that. Two, don't believe everything you see on the internet, because that'll just make you feel inadequate every single time. I think that one of the things you can do during this time is pay attention to your mental health. There are a lot of apps right now. They're not paying me to advertise, but Headspace is giving 30 to 60 days free. There's another one called Breathwork, and it's just very simple kind of entry level meditation things for you to do, because it's a really roller coaster of a time for our emotions. So I think definitely pay attention to your mental health, because it'll give you the clarity for you to figure everything else out too. So
Can I add one more thing real quick, if you don't mind?
You absolutely
love what you're saying. I think there are two other things I want to add. I think one is I think there's a really awesome opportunity to freelance. I know that sounds really weird, but I think that I think we all possess skill sets, right, that we can really provide to the world. And so thinking about how can you, maybe I can't find a job at a particular organization that I really want to work for. How can I make that opportunity for myself, right? So thinking about freelance and how you can do that. Second thing I would say is really hone in on your creativity skills, right? I think one of the things that is so important for folks to understand and for folks to know, LinkedIn did a study probably about a month ago. And what they did is they went through all of the different job descriptions that are listed out on LinkedIn, right? And the number one skill set that companies and organizations are looking for nowadays is creativity. Okay, and so as much as you can really make sure that you are honing in on your creativity, you know how to think critically. Again, the writing skills, the communication skills, those things are going to be so crucial for you as you navigate the workforce throughout the rest of your career, right? We are trying to prepare you for careers that don't even exist nowadays. And so that creativity piece is just so incredibly important for you all. And I think tech schools obviously can provide a lot of that creativity, but I personally am so biased towards liberal arts institutions because that's where I went. That's what I know. And so that liberal arts core of really teaching you how to think critically and being creative, I think are so important for folks to think about too. And now I will stop talking.
No, that was great.
No, thank you both. I'm glad you kind of naturally got there, because my question, you gave such wonderful answers to sort of, soon to be graduates, what's happening? What does a gap year look like? We're at a time where I'm like, what gap year? What does that mean when you can't get on a plane, when you can't go anywhere, when you're not sure what you can do? So I love that you talked about potentially virtual internships. You talked about freelancing. You talked about honing your skills, even in your home, because I think we kind of have to think outside the box, because so many of us are in the same spot and everyone is scrambling and thinking. So thank you for sharing both what I would call traditional concrete ways to plan and think that never get stale, that are always applicable, but also kind of making note of the time we're in and how we have to ask our students to act differently. So really, really appreciate that. And with that, we're going to move over actually to take some questions from our viewers. And so that's the end of the panel part of it. We've selected questions from our Girls Who Code alumni who are viewing this conversation and would like further guidance around navigating the college experience during this pandemic. We're going to ask our panelists to answer 2 questions individually and 1 together. Okay, the first question comes from Juliet Shepard and is for Mariela. What are the best ways for high school students to effectively move forward and not lose ground over the months to come as they look to prepare for college? Do you have any specific tools, practices, resources, or just milestones that students should be thinking about?
Yes. So I love using the word milestones when it comes to this, like the college application process, because there is literally something that you can do down the road, whether you're in 9th, 10th, 11th, middle school, etc. So one of the things that I love is on College Board, the majority of students will know it because they apply to take the SAT there. But College Board has an incredible amount of like checklists and different resources. So I always point my students toward College Board has a college access checklist by grade. So if you go onto the College Board website, collegeboard.org, and you go into resources, they actually have a checklist where it's like a 9th grade checklist, a 10th grade checklist, and it basically gives you like different things that you should be doing during that time. So what I would suggest, because kind of right now, you have to counsel yourself, right? Because it's very easy to walk into your counselor's, office and have this face-to-face conversation. But now, like, I have to ask her if it's okay for me to like Skype her, right? Or make an appointment, right? So I think one of the best things you can do, again, going back to advocacy, going back to planning, going back to research, is to look at what are things you can do on your own for the process. And I think one of the best things you can do is look at the checklist, research what you want to do, and start making a list. So that's what I would suggest that you do. Because even if you do have a question, as a counselor, it'll be a lot easier for me to advise you if you already have an idea. If you come to me and you're like, Miss, I don't know what to do. Okay, but you don't know what to do about what? Like, is there like, you don't know what to do about the fact that like you can't go outside? You don't know what to do about the fact that you wanted to apply to Columbia College and now, you missed their deadline. Let's call them and see if they,
We are
have
still taking
waivers.
applications. We are still taking applications.
Isn't that a great tip?
No, it's true,
Columbia College in
right?
Chicago is accepting apps.
Quick question about that, because my next is going through that right now. Have you noticed that colleges have reopened or their timelines have changed?
100%
across the board. So if you miss that opportunity to get your app in, that you should actually check on whether or not they're taking new apps.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. And they are waiving fees.
That's good to know.
So there isn't like a universal list, unfortunately, even though it would be awesome if we just had like this Google Doc of, all the colleges, but you just have to go directly on their website. And there've been a couple of colleges that we've called ourselves and they've given us the information over the phone. So I think it's as simple as you looking up, Columbia College admissions office. And then they either are going to have their contact info or they'll have a banner at the top that'll say, due to COVID, like, here's our process now.
Yeah. And
so
one of the lists that's coming out, just so you all do know, there is a list through the National Association for College Admission Counseling. It's NACAC, N-A-C-A-C. Their website is nacacnet.org, which is kind of a weird website. But shortly after May 1, they will be putting out a list where they collect information from different colleges in terms of if they're still taking applications and going through that process. So that is at least one list that I know of that will be coming out, because I just filled out that information earlier this week. So
yeah.
So that is something that you all can check.
Yeah. Hashtag rolling admissions.
Yes.
I appreciate that. Mariela, thank you so much. And Derek, thank you for just providing that little bit tidbit about extra information there. So our next question is for Derek from Katie Carrig. With the new grading systems and lack of knowledge around how grades will be integrated, do you have any recommendations for students who were strongly considering going to college internationally?
That's a really good question. So here is my biggest recommendation, and honestly, it kind of goes back to one of the things that I said earlier, is because we are all in the same boat. I think you're going to really, again, see some grace and see some flexibility with grades and with that process kind of as we move forward, probably over the course of the next several years when it comes to college admissions. The biggest thing, again, that Mariela really said is get to know and call your admissions representative. And I typed that out as well. Again, you know, these colleges, these universities, there are people like me who are there to help you navigate the process, right? And so if you are someone who's really looking at going to college abroad, you really want to check with those colleges about their processes, their procedures, get a sense of how they might evaluate your transcript, how they might evaluate your application. I think the second thing, though, that really makes international admissions really interesting is typically, and at least, you know, when students are coming from other countries into the United States, you have to get a student visa in order to study here in the United States. And many colleges are going to have something, or excuse me, many countries are going to have something similar to that. And so it really also behooves you to really check with the State Department in the particular countries in which that you are looking at to see what that visa process really looks like. You know, that's one of the things that, you know, with today's political climate that we are in, who knows what kind of visas the US government is going to be granting to international students to actually be able to study here in the States. And so you really want to, you know, if you're looking to go to England, or, you know, you want to go to Nigeria, or you want to go to Japan, whatever that might be, you really want to check with those countries and their state departments and really try to get a sense of how that process works, and how that process might have shifted here over the course of the last month and a half since month and a half obviously here in Chicago, but, you know, around the world, you know, since as early as November. You really want to check with countries and really get a sense of what those processes and procedures look like.
Derek, thank you so much. We are down to, I believe, what is our last question, and it's for both of you, and we can start with Mariela. Working at home is harder than if I was on campus. Are there any supports or resources that all schools are providing to help students in similar situations?
I'm sorry, Tarika, can you say that one more time? I caught the last bit of it. I'm sorry.
No, no worries. Working at home is harder than if I was on campus. Are there any supports or resources that all schools are providing to help students in similar situations?
Yeah, so particularly for me, I know that for New York City, the Department of Education, one of the things that talking about the interactions I've had with my colleagues is we've done a lot of like tutorials and a lot of like virtual one-on-one meetings and virtual check-ins. But I want to put a sticky note on that really quick. I want to remind all of the students that are logged onto this that the majority of you grew up with the internet, and you know how to do things on it that myself and Derek and anyone else,
I don't know what TikTok is.
Right.
I don't know what the kids are doing nowadays.
Listen, I downloaded the TikTok app and I just watched the videos because I don't even know where to start. Right? Now, if you want me to make you a PowerPoint, I'm on it 1,000%. Right? But you, ladies and gentlemen, you're not looking at PowerPoints, right? You're literally sharing information on a video app, right? So I think it's always interesting when I've been asked this question before, and I'm like, you guys should be teaching us, because I'm over here trying to figure out how I can do a college office TikTok about, you know, what rolling admissions and what the FAFSA means. So I think it's interesting because as working professionals and working from home and people that consistently have like this direct student service, we're always trying to figure out ways to connect with you. And that usually means knowing technology and being up to date with technology. And I used to think I was pretty hip, but then I'm like, okay, I don't even think they use the word hip anymore. No. So one of the things that we started doing is actually hosting circles and asking the students what's the best way for that they think is for them to receive information. And I think what that's creating is, again, this creative way for students to pitch how they can learn, right? Because one of the things I was telling them is like, I need you to learn this stuff anyways. I just have to figure out how you're going to learn it. So for example, one of the students asked me if I can WhatsApp them instead. For me, in my head, I'm used to, okay, let me send you a Zoom link. Let's do a Google Hangout. And they're like, oh, can I WhatsApp you? And I was like, oh, I guess that would be easier, right? Because we always have our phone and I'm already home because we're quarantined. So it's very odd because I would flip that question on its head and just say, like, as this kind of Generation Z population, you have the ability to transform so many things for us. Like, I'm pretty sure that, you know, Tarika, I don't know how old your daughter is, but I'm pretty sure she could teach you something about technology that would probably take Derek and I a couple Google searches.
Over. They like make all manner of videos. They're like, they have a YouTube channel. I'm like, what are you saying?
Right. And people get paid to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like Derek mentioned, freelancing. Like, people will literally pay you to set up a YouTube account for their brand or their organization. Like, schools will literally like pay you to do these things. Companies will literally pay you to do these things. So I would ask everyone that's logged on right now to think about their unique skill set and to think about all the people that are working from home right now and how, like, what a big part technology is playing and what can you add to the conversation? How can you reinvent or upgrade or make it more effective how we're currently communicating, right? There's like 100 and something of us on this chat. Someone had to send out all the invitations to coordinate this, right? And someone got paid to do it. And look how fantastic she did because it worked. We're here, we have the polls going, we have the questions going. So it's like one of those things that it's like, the sky is really the limit. Like, absolutely, we're in a pandemic and it has so many emotions, but there are so many resources and so many different ways that this can go about. But going back to the question, one of the things that we've done is community circles, but we try to pick a different topic every day that doesn't necessarily relate to our productivity. So, for example, last week we did an essential oils community circle where the students and the staff and everyone that was working from home and chiming in learned about how you can use lavender oil to de-stress. And it was one of those things that it was beautiful because it's like, we're not just logging on to take attendance and for someone to micromanage us that we are logged on, but now that like we actually care about other aspects holistically from ourselves. But yeah, man, have that conversation with your friends and with each other because it's such a beautiful silver lining right now. Like, it's just amazing. Like, look at us right now. It's about to be 8 p.m.
and we're conversation.
Yeah.
No, Mariela,
isn't that amazing?
It is. And I love what you're saying because, again, similar to how you answered another question earlier, the empowerment, the idea that, you know, the way the question was posed is that it's harder for students. And we don't want to negate that. We know that this is turning our typical learning on its head. But what I liked about how you answered it is that there is empowerment to be found, even when we feel like the resources aren't in front of us or something is not happening. I think you're again sort of saying, wait, let's be strengths-based and think about the situation. How do I turn it around or think about it differently? Derek, we're almost at time. Do you want to jump in with a quick thing before we wrap up?
Yeah, the one thing that I just wanted to mention is that most colleges and universities do have a career center of some sort, and that is a great resource for you all to really use as you're navigating, again, going into the workforce. You're starting to navigate, how do you work from home? How does this process really work? What technology is good to use? You know, how do I structure my day in such a way that I can still stay focused and get what I need to get done? So utilize the career services centers that you have at your colleges and universities because they provide some really great, I think, resources for you all. And they're learning too right now as we kind of navigate kind of this situation. And then the second thing I would say is find a really great mentor. If you have people, older cousins, friends, other folks who are in the workforce, and they are also navigating this time right now, reach out to those folks and make sure that you're staying in communication with them. The one thing that I am going to do in the chat box is I'm going to put both my Twitter account and because I am young enough to use Twitter, so I do know how to do that one. But I'm going to put my Twitter account and my email address in the chat box. And I really am like available and happy to be a resource for folks as you navigate the process. And if I don't have answers for you, I have a lot of friends in college admissions all across the country. And so I can easily connect you with some other folks. If I don't get back to you, too soon, please be patient. I supervise a team of 40 and things are kind of crazy right now, but I am also a great resource now.
Mariela and Derek, honestly, I'm thinking to myself, okay, why didn't I have folks like you in my life when I was in college? You have given so much science, so much wisdom, and frankly, just so much empathy in terms of what you shared. For all of our viewers, we want you to know that not only do you have, obviously, these amazing experts who have been so kind in sharing their time, but you also have our sisterhood, you have our community. So thank you so much for connecting with us. Don't get off yet. I just have one more thing for folks to do. If you did, please let us let me make sure I'm saying this correctly. Please let us know right now by completing our 1-minute survey to give us feedback on tonight's conversation. Please take out your phone and go to the camera, hover your camera over the QR code on the screen, and please complete the survey. Make sure, okay, perfect, the QR code is there. On behalf of Girls Who Code, I wanna say thank you so much again, Mariela and Derek, for joining us this evening and providing the insights that you did. You were amazing. I also wanna thank everyone watching and those who submitted questions by awarding the first 50 survey respondents with $10 Visa gift cards. Please be sure to follow us on social media, and I just wish everyone a really great night. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. This was fun.
It really was. Take care.
Bye.